Game 3 in the June 2007 LSAT, and if you take a look in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see what you have to download, the one free LSAT you can get online. And let's take a look. This is a sequencing game, so some similarities between this game and game 1 in the test. But here's the big difference. So we're given 4 items, G, J, M, and T, and we have to place them in seven different spots. It's supposed to be a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Each of them has to appear at least once, but some of them will appear more than once. So in game 1, we had 5 digits, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that had to appear in 5 places. Each of them could only appear once, and all of them had to appear. So this is a little bit different. Here we have 4 things to place, and all 4 will be placed, but others will be placed more than once. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have here. Rule 1, J is not going to go in slot 4. So that one, no need to write it down. I'll just put it in the diagram. And I like to put a negative sign to indicate what can't be true. Some folks like to write a little slash like that instead, just personal preference. How about rule 2? T has to go in slot 7. So that I'll just put in the master diagram. T goes in 7. How about 3? We're going to make exactly 2 voyages to M. Since it's exactly 2, why don't I mark these as M1, M2? So I'll always be crystal clear on which M I'm talking about. And it says more, there will be at least 1 voyage to G in between them. So I'm going to write this again, M1, there will be at least 1 G. Could be more than 1 G, but at least 1 G in between them. And do I even want to make note that G, there could be more than 1? Sure, why don't I write, at least once, that says least. Nothing I can really put in the diagram there. How about rule 4? This rule, very, very important, and really our first review of an important idea that's going to come up a lot in the LSAT, if-then statements. And what does this say? Basically, wherever J appears, you're going to have a G right before it. That's an if-then statement. You'll see versions of if-then statements in the games and even more so in the logical reasoning section. So I can write it that way. I'm also going to write a little arrow to really emphasize if you see J, G comes to the left. This is not the same as saying if you see G, then you're necessarily going to see GJ. That's a very different rule, so I'm going to erase that. The rule, we're not saying that. Any deductions there? Anything I can put in the diagram? Well, I can say that you can't have J in week 1. Why? Because G has to appear before it, and there's no week 0. So we can put that in the diagram. Not a huge deduction, but something worth placing. How about rule 5? No destination scheduled for consecutive weeks. So how about, let's see, consecutive weeks. Put a little block around that. And how about, I don't know, let's just write a big X. How about that? No destination scheduled for consecutive weeks. If I apply that to the diagram, what can I say? Well, not much. I could say that T can't go on week 6. That seems a little obvious, but we might as well put it up there. Okay, now the next step on any logic game is to go back, look at the rules, and see if you can combine them and make any deductions based on the combination. Now, in this particular case, if you look through them, rule 1, very clear. Rule 2, very clear. If you look through them, not really any combinations you can make. If you look at rules 3 and 4, if there's a G in between M1 and M2, you could have a J to the right of that G, but you could have a J and a G somewhere else. So not necessarily true. And then rule 5, we already talked about rule 5. So not much we can get by combining rules here, but I want to point it out because it's a crucial step to make when you do logic games. So even though it doesn't tell us much in this game, I want to say that right away. All right, we now have a master sketch. I'm going to put a thick line underneath it. We're not going to touch it. We're not going to tamper it. Every question we do, we're going to look at the information in the master sketch and apply it to every question we do. First question is your typical acceptable situation question. And this question, people don't like it, but it actually does you a big favor. It allows you to confirm whether you understood the rules correctly and whether you wrote them down correctly. So let's take a look here. Rule 1, you can't have a J in slot 4. So we take a look. Let's see, is answer A okay? Yep, B is okay, C is okay. But look at D, where we have a J in slot 4. So D is out. Why don't you take a moment, pause the video, take the second rule, see what you can eliminate, take the third rule, see what you can eliminate, and so forth. And then we'll come back in a moment and take a look. Rule 2, this one's easy. T has to appear in slot 7. What can you get rid of? E is gone. Rule 3, you have 2 M's and at least 1 G in between them. So let's take a look. A is fine. B, look at that, MTM, that violates the rule. How about the next rule? Where you see a J, you have to see a G to the left of it. A is fine, but C, look at that, you have a J in slot 1. That's a problem. So C is out. Answer A. So once again, these acceptable situation questions, they actually do you a favor by giving you the opportunity to make sure that you understood the rules correctly and wrote them out correctly. Which question do we want to take on first? Well, we're going to skip over 12 for a moment. Good to jump into questions that actually give you some information. They really narrow down the list of possible arrangements. So we're going to take on 13 first. And I'll note that this is 13. Write down my 7 sections, my 7 slots. Next thing I'll do is write down what I know for sure, which is that slot 7 has a T in it. And then what are we told? Trinidad in week 5. Okay, so we'll place T here. Which of the following could be true? So we're going to have one choice that could be true, and the other 4 cannot be true. Okay, I placed my item. Now let's take a look at the rules. And the easiest rules to look at are the ones in the diagram. So I take a look. Okay, no J in slot 4, which means J could go where? Could it go in slot 6? No, because the rule about J says you have to have a G right before it. Can't go in 4. Where could it go? 3 or 2. So since we have two sort of broad scenarios here, I'd like to write these out. So we have either a J in 2 or a J in 3. Okay, let's apply my rules on J. J says what? You have to have a G to the left of it. You have to have a G to the left of it. Okay, we talked about G. What are the rules on G? Well, at least one G has to appear between the two M's. Now, how could that work? Well, in scenario 1 here, we could have an MG M. That would be fine, and that doesn't violate any other rules. How about in the next scenario, where the M's going to go? Well, the first one has to go in slot 1. You can't have an M in slot 4 and then the second M in 6. First one has to go here. So now we know a lot of things that have to be true in the two scenarios. How about the remaining 2 slots in this second scenario? What could be true? Well, you can't have 2 J's next to each other. You can't have 2 T's next to each other. Let's see, slot 4, it could be an M. I'll write it that way. Slot 6 could be an M. You can write it that way, or we could just write M, circle it. It can either go here or it can go here. And let's see, who else could go in that slot if it were an M? Well, J and T we said can't, could be G's in here. That would be fine. So this question is, which of the following could be true? Now we're looking at 2 broad scenarios, so it looks like lots of things could be true. Why don't you pause for a moment, take a look at the choices, and then we'll see what you think. This question, since we have good diagrams, pretty easy. T on week 1, not possible. M on week 2, not possible. G on week 3, not possible. M on week 4, that is possible. That is possible in this second diagram. So answer choice D on this question. Question 14, we're going to do that one next because it gives us some details. So let me write down 14 and then we'll write in our spots here, and I'm going to bring T down. And what are we told? We're going to G on week 1 and J on week 5. So we'll put in G, we'll put in J. First thing we do, what do the rules say about G and what do the rules say about J? Well, J, of course, we know by now the G appears before it. How about the rules on G? At least one G has to appear before the 2 M's, which means what? You're going to have an M in week 6. M2 is going to have to be in week 6. And M1, it's either going to be in week 2 or in week 3. And what else could be true? Well, we could figure it out quickly, but let's not do that because this is a must be true question. We now know a couple things that must be true. Let's see if one of the answer choices is that G has to be in 4 or that M has to be in 6. And if you take a quick look, yes, M in slot 6. Since it's a must be true question, we'll jump to the choices after we know a couple of things that must be true. Next question, question 15, also gives us some details. So we'll put that in there and once again bring our T down. And what are we told? Voyage to G in week 1 and T in week 2. Okay. G in week 1, T in week 2. And here again, a must be true. So what do our rules say? Well, let's see. We've just placed G. Any rules on G? Well, we know a G, as we've said before, has to go in between 2 M's. So there's going to be another G in the middle here somewhere. We're also going to have to put our M's in the middle here somewhere and our J. So let's write this down. M, G, M2. And we have what? How many slots here? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 3 letters. You have to put J in there. Where's J going to go? It's going to go right before G. So how about that? We know exactly where everything is going to be placed. This is a must be true question. So lots of things must be true. We know the entire sequence. So we can take this one's pretty easy. We can take a very quick look at the answer choices. And there you go, answer choice A. M must be in week 3. Let's go to a new slide, take on question 16. What do we have here in 16? We're going to go to M on week 3. So bring my T down, M on week 3. Now, is that the first time we go to M or the second time? We don't know. But we're asked for a complete and accurate list of where we could go on weeks 4 and 5. So lots of possible arrangements here. What's jumping out is, here again, and this happens all the time on the test, would help to create 2 scenarios, one with M over here and one, and that of course would be M1 and this would be M2, but another one where M1 is here and then M2 is somewhere over here, and of course we know we have to have a G at some point before it. So we're not trying to list out all the possible arrangements here, we just want some organization. And we'll apply the rules. So in the first situation, of course, there has to be a G in between M1 and M2. Okay. M is taken care of, G is taken care of, T is taken care of. Where can J go? Well, it's either going to be in 5, slot 5, in which case G would come before it, or it's going to be in slot 6, in which case G would come before it. Who could go in slot 4? Can't be another M or G, or J would have to be T. And maybe we had to write those 2 arrangements down, or maybe we didn't. The most important thing was just to come up with these 2 broader scenarios. All right, so scenario 2. Take a quick look at the answer choices, by the way. Is GJ a choice? It is not. Is TG a choice? It is not, but that's okay. Was very much worth creating that first scenario. How about the second scenario? A little trickier here. You might say we have to have our J, G block in there, but no, that could actually go in what? 1 and 2. So it could go on the left over there, could go on the right over here. Let's see, what other possibilities do we have? Well, since it seems like there are a lot of them, let's eliminate some choices that can't be true. For example, slot 4, it can't be M. So anything that here that begins with an M, C, that's out. We have a rule that tells us J can't be in slot 4, so answer B is out. What do our other rules say? Well, it says that J has to be preceded by a G, so that rules D out. Another rule says that 2 M's have to have a G in between them. Answer E is out. So GT, and let's make sure that works. If we did GT, where does the J go? Well, it would go in slot 2 with the G before it. Who could go in slot 6? Has to be M2. So that's the arrangement that is possible. So this question took longer. The lesson on this one is really after you've written a few things down, hey, go back and see what you can eliminate. Narrow down the list of possible answer choices. In this, of course, answer A. Question 17, another must be true. Now, a really important point on this question. If you take a look at an answer choice, you don't want to have to ponder over it for too long. If you're not sure if it's the right answer, put a little tilde by it. Take a look at the next choice. Don't ponder over any one choice for too long. See if one jumps out at you. It can save you a lot of time. So let's see. Answer choice A. Must it be true that we go to G on either week 1 or week 2? Now translate that. That's the same as asking, could we have our G or our G's starting week 3 or later? Well, the placement of G wasn't all that limited in this question, so not quite sure about that. So let's put a little tilde by it. Maybe we'll come back to that. How about B? Do you definitely have to go to M on either week 2 or week 3? Well, the first thought here is that we could do M on week 1. That could be our first M. Then the question becomes, could the second M be on week 4 or later? Well, it seems like you probably could. Actually, if you skip back to question 13, it turns out that yes, we can. But if you're not sure, you put a little tilde next to that. How about C? And apologies, this answer choice is actually written incorrectly. It should say G at most twice, at most twice. Does that have to be true? You go to G at most twice. In other words, is 3 or more times impossible? Well, 3 times seems like a lot. Then again, we have 7 slots. So we have 2 M's, a T, and a J that we for sure have to fill. Can all the remaining slots be filled by G? Seems like a possibility. Here again, we'll put the tilde by it. How about D? Must it be true that you make at most 2 voyages to J? So that's the same as asking, could you make 3 or more journeys to J? All right, that's the correct answer. We know very well at this point that anytime you go to J, you have to go to G as well. If you went to J 3 times, you'd have to go to G 3 times. That's 6. We don't have enough slots over for T and the 2 M's. So D is our correct answer choice. Now we'll go back and look at question 12. So we'll switch slides here. Which of the following cannot be true about freedom's schedule? So pause for a moment and take a look at those choices. Anytime you see a cannot be true question, first thing to do is what? Look at the rules, and you probably spotted very quickly that A is the correct answer. You can't have 2 T's next to each other. So that one pretty easy. Now, before we jump to the top 10 list, a few points. Number 1, this was a pure sequencing game. The next one, game 4, will be a pure grouping game, so you definitely want to take a look at that. Number 2, lessons 5 through 20, all going to be drawn from, you'll see below, a book of official prep tests. So just go down to the website, crushthelsat.org, and try to order that book. Number 3, if you have any thoughts about this logic game, or maybe any suggestions about how to approach it differently, definitely post a comment. That's helpful for everybody, so be sure to post any comments. Click the like button if you found the video helpful. Be sure to subscribe, share it with your friends. And finally, a point that's true of all games, you're going to see a lot of writing here, a lot of diagramming. The goal here is to get you to a point where after watching the 20 videos and then doing a couple practice tests, you may not have to do as much diagramming. A lot of what we've done here, you'll be able to picture in your mind, and you can save a little time by not doing quite as much diagramming. So a great thing to do is watch the videos, then do the games again after you've watched the videos, get used to the process, and then at some point you won't have to write down quite as much and can save a little time that way. But hold off on that until after you're done with the 20 videos. Top 5 LSAT study tips. Did I say top 10 before? Sorry, I meant to say top 5. First one, after you take these free 20 logic games lessons, so you can relieve your worries about logic games and build the habits that you really need to master them, go to Khan Academy. For those who aren't familiar with Khan Academy, they offer free lessons on all kinds of subjects, and they now have some free LSAT lessons. So you definitely want to visit Khan Academy. You should not have to spend a gazillion dollars to prep for the LSAT. First, take their free practice test, and then within no later than a month, complete all their lessons. Very important to know that the LSAT does not test content. Your college major is not going to influence how well you do on this test. Your factual knowledge in this world is not going to influence your performance on the test. It is a test about thinking, ways to think. And you need to develop certain habits of thinking thoroughly and slowly before you jump into the practice test. With that in mind, and number 2, after you're done with the Khan videos, take 2 practice tests untimed, and you'll see on our website, crushthelsat.org, 2 good books with official LSATs in them. The first one is great because it gives you not only the tests themselves, but also explanations to every question, explanations written by the creators of the test. You want to take your first 2 practice tests slowly, methodically, and really practice the thinking. Get used to the thinking. Now, after that, you'll want to take another, let's say, 6 to 8 official practice tests. You'll want to take those times, but even there, for the first few, split your practice into 2 days. You got to remember that although the test has 6 sections on test day, one of them is a writing section. It is not included in your score from 120 to 180, and the other is an unscored section. So it will be an additional logic games or logical reasoning or reading comp section that's in there just so that the test creators can try out some questions that they may use in future tests. When you do a practice test yourself, you only need to take 4 sections. It's a great idea when you first get started. Do 2 on one day, then spend a couple hours reviewing them, then take the other 2 sections the next day and spend a few hours reviewing them. Now, of course, after that, you do want to take 3 or 4 practice tests all in one sitting. You want to get a sense of what it's like to actually take the test on the test date. Number 3, be aware that questions are not listed in order of difficulty. The first few will tend to be fairly easy, but then after that, you might get a really hard one. You don't want to get stuck. You don't want to spend 3, 4, 5 minutes focused on one question. Strategically, you want to just circle it, move on, and if you have time, come back to it. That takes some getting used to, so you got to make sure you do that. Number 4, when you practice, realize there's no penalty for wrong answers. Some folks wonder about that. You should absolutely answer every question, even if you're just guessing. Number 5, and this is really important. Obviously, you want to review the questions you got wrong. Also review the ones you got right because you may have gotten it right for the wrong reason. You want to read it again and think some more about whether you got it right for the right reason. So I hope that lesson was helpful and hope to see you again in lesson 4, game 4 in the June 2007 LSAT. See you there.